Hello, everyone, on Preston Lane Radio, and welcome to our Meet the Winemaker series, where our objective is to give you, the audience, an inside track and story on the harvest with our clients. This vintage 2020 has been particularly interesting with all that's going on with the virus, the economy, and of course, the fires in California. And it gives me a great deal of happiness and pleasure to introduce to you a couple of very, very important people in Napa Valley, and indeed for all wine. Today we have with us Michael, Keenan, and his son Reilly, who are the owners and winemakers of the famed Keenan Wines on Spring Mountain in Napa Valley. Welcome, guys.
Hey, nice to be here. Thanks.
So to begin with, can you give the audience just a brief background and introduction on yourselves? Tell us about your background and time in the wine business with Keenan.
Sure. I'm the second generation owner, director of the program. My father, Robert, was the one who bought the property 46 years ago, 1974, looking for a great place to make, first growth quality Cabernet Sauvignon. And so we've had the chance to farm this property continuously since then, and have really begun to dial it in, to make a long story short. And Reilly, of course, generation number 3, quite passionate, has taken up the mantle of engaging in this project with me, and is totally enthused and thankfully on the same page as me as far as style and all that kind of stuff, that we don't have to rehash that story. But no, we're pretty excited. We're doing new things this year. I kind of put Reilly in charge of experimental stuff. So we planted some Mourvedre and Menthea 3 years ago, I guess. We got our first crop of Mourvedre this year, and we're making a rosé out of it as per Reilly's ideas for his experimental wine this year. So that's pretty interesting and can be a lot of fun. It tastes pretty good too.
That's great. I know that's something that Reilly and I have talked about before, and I know there's a lot of people that are excited to taste the fruits of his labor, so to speak. So that's great. So fair to say you guys are keeping it all in the family, but you've got a team out there. How big is your team that you work with, and how many people work at the winery and in the vineyards?
We have 6 people on our team. So we are a lean, mean fighting machine, and pretty much everybody does the work of 2. It's an extraordinarily efficient group of people, and it's something I'm extraordinarily proud of, to be able to sort of change the tenor of the business from my father's, as I jokingly refer to it, his reign of terror for the 20 years he ran the winery, to my more benevolent dictatorship program. And the proof of the pudding is that, Matt, our GM, who's just incredibly talented and hardworking, he's been with us for 25 years. Laura, who runs the tasting room and is upstairs hosting people right now. Thank God people are still coming to the tasting room through the traffic on Spring Mountain of all the repair vehicles. She's been with us for 24 years. Our cellar master has been with us for 17 years. Mm-hmm. And I always like to say, jokingly, it took him 10 years to shed the tag new guy, because for 10 years he was the new guy. So, and we've got a few younger people working for us in the office and in the cellar that are great additions that hopefully will be with us for a long time. But the vineyard, we use a contractor for the vineyard, a guy named Peter Nissen, who's been in the valley for, I think, longer than we have. And it's just Mr. Farmer in a nutshell. Common sense guy who's just so awesome. He's sort of the unsung hero of our program for all the work that he's done. And he never gets any credit during presentations or wine dinners. It's all about the vineyard and our brilliant winemaking and everything. But Peter plays an enormously important role in our program.
That's great.
We literally grow our wines as opposed to make them, I think, is a fair thing to say.
Yeah, I do think, I know when we're talking with people out in the field, our team, and for all the people that are fans of Keenan and drinking it, I know one of the things that I think is just absolutely spectacular is you guys really are about the terroir. You're about the consistency of your style and what you do. And so it shows through. So, I've said it to you before, I think I don't know that anybody's better at what they do than you are. So excellent stuff. And I want to switch gears and discuss what we're here for, the very important topic that I know is on everyone's mind, and that's the harvest of 2020. So let's discuss the harvest. And for the record, the harvest did come in before the fires, right?
Well, it depends on which fires you're talking about. The LNU complex started around August 19th from the lightning strikes that we had. during that somewhat dry storm, and that affected the eastern mountains probably the most. It also started fires in Sonoma, which affected a lot of Sonoma. It also started fires in Santa Cruz area, Carmel, Monterey area. I mean, it just was an enormous amount of fires going on from these lightning strikes. And so that happened. We hadn't picked anything before those fires. We think everything we picked during those fires and before the glass fire, which is the dramatic incident that affected us, and we did pick about 85% of our estate, or maybe 90% before the glass fire. We think all those wines are going to be not only sound but absolutely terrific. So we're pretty excited about that. We're just getting the numbers back from the ETS on the actual data on how much glycol is in the wines and cresol and stuff like that. So we're just beginning to do some analysis, and I think by January we'll really have a good feel. So, and I think if you talk to any vendor, they'll tell you that this has been the most uncertain harvest of all time. We think those wines are going to be good. We think the numbers are coming in okay, but we're dealing with things we've never dealt with, and we're trying to bone up on these numbers and topics as fast as we can to make sure we make really great decisions. But from the sensory tasting analysis, so far the 2020s are phenomenal. In fact, I've said this many times. It's the most amazing Merlot I've ever seen, which is saying something, because we make some pretty amazing Merlots. But I've never seen this kind of color and structure and depth in Merlots before. So it looks good.
During the harvest, would you say there was a great deal of excitement, during the harvest for the vintage, or did that excitement really accelerate after you started tasting what was in the winery, in the cellar?
It's really hard to use that word at all, because this year has been so uncertain. And so, I mean, we almost forgot about COVID for a while because we were so focused on fires. But COVID plays a role in everything we do and how people get here and everything. But there's been so much stuff up in the air that it's been, prior to the lightning strike complex fires, LNU fires, I'd say late July, early August, I was really excited about this vintage. It just had that look. The clusters were perfect. The yields are going to be a little bit below average, but they just look so perfect. The canopies were great. The evening, the ripening was even during veraison. You just had this feel that, my God, this is going to be great. And I think that feeling is true. It's just a question of, are we really going to be able to bottle all these wines? Or are they going to be tainted from the first fires? We did pick what little we had hanging during the glass fire. We did pick after the fire was over, and those wines tasted horrible. And there, we got some numbers back already, and those numbers were very high. So we know they're no good.
Right. How many people are involved in the harvest? I guess if you contract it out, it's not your company and your people, but how many people do they bring up to do the harvest?
Well, we're totally in control of it. I mean, and Matt plays the biggest role there.
Yeah.
He and I used to coordinate picking together, and Matt's just gotten so good at it. He just has assumed that role. So we control it 100%. But depending on how much we're going to pick that day, depends on how many teams they send us. And traditionally, a team has been 8. Sometimes we'll get 1 team, 2 teams, 3 teams. But then this year, Peter had to change the size of his team because of COVID. So if one person tests negative, they have to quarantine the whole team positive. So he reduced the size of his team. So that was another X factor. Okay, do we need 4 teams now, or do we need 3? But as usual, Peter was there when we needed him and got everything done in a perfectly timely manner. So it's another great year of his help.
Yeah. So really, really tricky. I hadn't even thought about that in terms of, normally during, let's say not 2020, let's say 20 every year before, the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and up to 2019. Generally, does it take 3 or 4 days to harvest? And I know weather plays a part of it. So, one block might be ready, one block might not be ready, but how many man hours does it typically take to harvest?
Well, I think our average duration for harvest is about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, last year, let's look at 2019, which was a kind of a typical harvest. We got going, and it was hot and heavy, and then we had a nice break from the weather, which came at just the right time because all our tanks were full. It was a good yielding harvest, and we had about a week off in between where we left off picking and where we picked up again, and that was just a perfect break. And I think the total lapse time was about 4 weeks,
right?
5 weeks. This year was faster. This year was was closer to 3 weeks, which I think is the most condensed harvest we've ever had.
Excellent. And how are the yields overall? Typical, small. You said a little. You said a little bit smaller a minute ago, but
Yeah, a little bit less than average.
a little bit less. So, and the quality is above average. You said. So, how
I think it's
how would you rate or rank the varietals? Anything stand out? Like this vintage was exceptional for.
well, like I mentioned before, the Merlot is the one standout for me. I've never seen Merlot with that kind of depth, power, whatever you want to see in a wine, color. I mean, it just that stands out to me the most. But everything tastes great. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm very happy with it.
I always find one of the sleepers is the Chardonnay. I think that the Chardonnay there is just exceptional, and it's obviously there's not much of it up there on Spring Mountain. So, what order
Yeah.
do you typically harvest in? Is Chardonnay the first that you usually bring in?
About half the time. Sometimes Zen off the Point Vineyard comes in first because it's more southeast exposure. The Zen will ripen a little bit quicker, but it's maybe more than 50% the Chardonnay will go first. So,
Right.
actually, what I'm telling about what we did with Chardonnay this year, that was your idea for a small experiment.
Oh yeah, we kind of so our Chardonnay vineyard has always been known for its high yields, to put that lightly, and we've always kind of embraced that. And so just kind of I thought it would be interesting to kind of approach our block of Chardonnay in the opposite direction with reduced yields and some pretty serious crop thinning, which we did to a small portion of our Clone 4 and an even smaller portion of our Dijon, I think, and then harvested right around the same time as the house, I think, as a control. Everything the same except for yields, and then fermented everything and approached it in the cellar the same way, and then there's the differences are pretty marketed. They're the texture, there's aromatic differences, and right now it's separate in the cellar, but I think the plan is to then layer it into the house cuvee,
Right.
and just kind of expand the complexity and expression of what we've always been making, and see how that goes.
Huh.
And then see what we can do to improve upon that next year. So that's kind of cool. Our Chardonnay program hasn't changed significantly in a while. I mean, we mess around with the oak program every year. We tinker with that. But as far as how we approach it in the vineyard, we haven't made any big changes like that in quite a while. So this is kind of a fun little tweak for us, and we'll see how it goes. We bottled that in March, right? March or April, and then we'll see. But yeah, that's a fun little twist that we have going here underneath all the calamity up here this year. I hadn't even thought of that. I haven't thought of that in a while. There's just been a lot going on. But yeah, our Chardonnay's got a little fun extra layering this year.
I consider the experiment this year a success, just from what he said, the added layering of aromatics, flavor, and mouthfeel. It will make the Chardonnay a little bit more complex, which I think is great.
Yeah, and we're lucky to get the yields in the rest of the vineyard that we do. So it's easy to carry, the four rows of vines that we've decided to drop fruit in,
Give money
to
away.
to drop money on the ground, essentially, or volume at the very least. So it's a worthwhile endeavor, I think, in the pursuit of a better Chardonnay.
I think we will learn something from it.
Interesting. And so, what's the last thing to come in?
The upper Cab Franc, top of the property, almost 2,000 feet every year. That's the last thing.
Didn't make it this year. As far as being on the right side of the glass fire, it was hanging up there the entire time, just hanging in a cloud. So we harvested it and made it, and we have it, and we're gonna probably make 2 cases of it and just have it up here for history's sake and for educational purposes. But it already at the stage it's at in the cellar, it's undrinkable.
Right.
So,
well, that's unfortunate, but
the fire literally burnt all around the upper bowl. The forest on both sides. You go up the hill, both of them were on fire. Across the street was on fire. The little section below it between the parking lot and the start of the vineyard was on fire. To the right, to the left. I mean, it's just crazy how fire went through our property. It didn't go around us; it went through us.
Well, I guess that's a good segue. Right before we segue in, how many cases of wine do you think you'll make this year?
Probably 8,000,
About 8,000. Okay.
and 14 is probably about our norm.
Right. Yeah.
That's
So
a
it's definitely going to
good
be less
40% drop.
yeah.
And it'll mean no Napa Cab, no Napa Merlot, because we couldn't bring in the Gianna Cabernet that makes the part of the Napa Cab, the 20%, because it was smoke tainted from the LNU fire. And then we couldn't bring in the Carneros Merlot because it was tainted from the same fire.
Right.
That plays the same role in the Napa Merlot, about 20%. Didn't get any Syrah this year. That was all tainted. And couldn't get our little Calistoga Zin from Peter, our vineyard manager. So the Zin production will be down to a teeny bit. We actually got a pretty good harvest off the Zin block this year. It was well above last year. So we'll make some outstanding wines. They'll be in a different format. So, I mean, I think Reilly and I had the same idea simultaneously in different places. And we started talking about it when we saw each other the next day about doing more single vineyard, sort of like the way Diamond Mountain does, to highlight different vineyards because they're all so good. And we're not going to have a Napa Cab or a Napa Merlot. So it might be a way to really show off more parts of the property that have never been put in a single vineyard format.
Right. So terroir, right? That's a great idea. Okay, so switching gears, and I know I know I want to hear about it, and I know a lot of people want to hear about it. And so let's talk about the tragedy that Napa and Sonoma, and heck, most of the Pacific Northwest went through. We've heard a lot of the stories, but I guess the first place to start is I don't know that a lot of people know how significant your property is. It's not just a vineyard. So, I think in relation to how everything went down, it would be great to give the listeners a sort of a little bit of a feel for your property on Spring Mountain.
It's 180 acres total, and it's really a lot of it is very rugged, forested terrain that we can see a lot more clearly now because of the fire. So we've got just under 50 acres of vineyard planted, plus a couple acres of building sites and roads. So we've got about 130 acres of forest to 50 acres of developed lands, which I've always talked about in the terms of sustainability. This is a wonderfully sustainable, long-term approach to land use management. We have more wild land for the trees and the birds and the bees and everything than we do cultivated land, and I think that's a model that will work long term. That being said, we had a lot of areas for the fire to burn, and just by the grace of God, we were able to escape with no structural damage to we have 4 houses on the property, plus the winery, plus a barrel, the barrel building we call the barn. It's just amazing. We lost our Wi-Fi station. We lost, fences and culverts and signposts and retaining walls and things that you can rebuild. But we didn't lose any of the structures that we live in or work in, thank God, or any of our wines from 2019, which are still in barrel, all the reds.
So tell me and tell everybody about this thing just got going, and I think the words you used to me was it just took on a life of its own. It was like a living thing tearing through your property. Tell me a little bit about what happened. Were you able to get up there? Were you able to I think you told me that you were at one point with the fire team, right?
Yeah, Reilly can speak to that more than I can. He was here more than I was, but because he lives here. But we started with evacuation on Sunday the 27th. The night before, Reilly had a birthday party with all his buddies. So I did not expect a phone call from Reilly at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I knew something was up when I saw his name on my phone, and he was telling me that he just heard that a fire started on Glass Mountain, which is directly to our north. And that's where the winds were coming from that day. That was the north, dry, blustery wind that is the sort of the firestorm wind. And so by 5 o'clock, you guys had to evacuate?
So for anyone not familiar with Napa layout, Glass Mountain is on the other side of the valley from us. So we still thought we were okay, despite the wind pushing it towards us. The valley is the world's greatest fire break as far as we were concerned at the time. So we just kind of went back to business as usual as far as the Sunday goes, just kind of lazing about. And for the whole day until around, gotta been 8 o'clock ish, Matt, our general manager, came over to my house and said that there was some concern that the fire was going to make a jump because it had gotten to the skinniest point of the valley, which is just in between St. Helena and Calistoga, essentially. And those embers, as we've learned, even from 2017, can travel for miles up in the wind and start fires way downwind. So we were aware. Everyone was very uneasy. Anyone who's been in fire can attest to that feeling where you just know something's not right. You can't go to sleep. You can't relax. You can't really enjoy anything because you just know something's coming. And then very soon after I saw Matt initially, I went over to his house on the mule, and I just saw just a whole wall of orange glow very close to what seemed like right below his house. And that's when he told me that he thought it had jumped. And we were out of there within 10 minutes, and the power got cut or something burned where we lost power in between, trying to get your cell phone and your wallet and your car keys. So I lost, all I got was my phone and my car keys and the dog. And that was it. We were out of there, and it wasn't too soon after we left the front of the driveway where, you were looking up to your left on your way down Spring Mountain, and just the whole hillsides were orange as this fire just raced up towards Matt's house and the winery and everyone else's wineries and everything. And just seeing that, your heart just sank because you just didn't, with that kind of force, you didn't think anything was going to survive. And so we all evacuated and hung out in St. Helena for a while at some friends' houses, and then eventually I made my way down to Oakland, where we all stayed for another day, just hoping and praying. And we got word, I think late Monday, that a fire chief may have gone by and taken a look at maybe part of the property and thought actually it looked pretty good, which was really heartening. And so we resolved to leave the next morning as early as we could on Tuesday to get up there. And somehow we got up there before they set up CHP roadblocks, which we were dealing with for what seemed like a month at the bottom of that hill. But we got up there right before that became an everyday thing. And got up here when there was fire still all over the property, just kind of just hanging out, greeting us as we drove up. But there was no wind, which was just the only reason it felt safe to go up there and take a look around and realize nothing had been burned, despite everything around Matt's house being torched. The fire hadn't reached the main structures of the winery quite yet. That would take another 2.5 days. And then we all kind of regrouped, and then I decided to stay up there with Matt. And we kind of just kept this schedule where we would meet up at every 3 hours at night and go check out what was going on, try and put out some spot fires. And we did what felt like a lot of work when it came to fire suppression. But as it turned out later, it just, everything we did was so silly and facile, and it just nothing mattered in the end because the fire was going to do what the fire was going to do, as I've come to learn. There's not much you can do unless you've got some serious equipment and some pros that know what they're doing.
To speak to your question about the fire being an animal, the thing that really captured it was, the hill that I'm looking at through the cellar here, what we call Sternix Hill, that thing was on fire when we got here on Tuesday. We can't believe it actually died down by the end of the day. And then on Wednesday, Reilly and Matt were down on our neighbor's property putting out some spot fires by the house. They had bales of hay that were on fire. And the fire kind of calmed down and retreated down into the creek. And Reilly described the sound of the fire in the creek as an animal growling in the bushes, just waiting to make its move. And it kind of worked its way around the winery, kind of to the north and the west, and then came at us on Thursday night with a vengeance from two different directions, from above and from the side. And that was sort of the climactic night. And that's when the fire department got here just in the nick of time. And, Reilly was on the phone with me, FaceTiming me. I was watching this. And, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the fire guy, they roll up and they look around and they go, son, put that hose down, save your water. We're here now. It's like, okay.
Tell me, stop what I was doing. Cut it out. Stop wasting water.
And they get out of their car all nonchalant. Yeah, we got this down.
Oh my God.
Don't worry about it. Fire's raging. We're like, oh!
These guys were very relaxed in their approach. They were conserving energy. They were working incredible hours. It's amazing to see these guys show up to what is to be dramatic, a life or death situation, definitely for the business potentially, and everyone's immediate futures as far as their jobs go. and then these guys come up and they're very relaxed. They've been battling fires all day. They may have just lost the structure, and it's just like, this is just another place they got to bust their ass to try and save, and they're going to do it, in the gradual, most effective way possible. And that didn't include running around, getting way too excited, which is every other person's instinct when they see fire, because you're just a scared animal at that point.
Well, especially when it's coming at the back of the winery where there's 1,000-gallon propane tank right next to the building that if it went off, it'd be the end of half the old structure that we could never rebuild the way it was.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Michael, you and I were on the phone. We were talking one day, and I said to you, and this really is a truth. I mean, I of all the people I know that have just been through everything, I actually don't think I know anybody that has lived more than you in terms of just going through everything. I remember is it the 2006 vintage, or there was a vintage where you're like, I don't know, this is like, I can't believe how hard this one is to sell. And then, so you had that, then of course we had the global financial crisis, and 2008 and 9, we all lived through that and made it through. And then, then you've got one challenge after another, the succession planning, there's the government, there's, the overall economy, then there's COVID-19, and then there's these fires. I mean, it's almost like, what else could possibly, and I don't want to say it.
We've learned not to say that up here.
Yeah. So it's really a testimony, I think, to a couple of things. First of all, obviously how talented and brilliant you and everybody in your family is, but how tough you guys are. I mean, it's, I don't think that, I'm not sure that any of us could really ever begin to imagine what that must have been like, to go through that. I know, we've here where I live, we have hurricanes every once in a while, and, you sit there and you feel a little bit helpless for an afternoon or two, for 4 to 6 hours, but you had to live with that for what, 3 or 4 days, right?
So it was a week of anxiety.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
And your life's work is at a fire's mercy. It's just, it just had to have been surreal and unbelievable to deal with. To your credit, you guys made it through, and good for you. And I know, I will also say this: I don't know too many people that taste wine better and than you guys do. You and your team. So if you say they're great wines, I can't wait to taste them.
Can't wait to show them.
Yeah, great. Well, that about wraps up the time that we have today. But is there, before we say goodbye, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or discuss relative to anything?
Well, I think it's worth pointing out that we are open. We can see visitors. We can do indoor tasting. It can be a challenge getting up Spring Mountain Road because of the continuous work they're doing on it. But heck, if you want an adventure, come to Napa now and come up to Spring Mountain. You'll see something you have never seen before.
Life in the burn zone.
Yeah,
come taste some wine.
It might be a little shocking, but again, when you get to our driveway and you get into what I call the inner campus here, and you get out of your car in the parking lot, you will have the same experience you've always had. When you get out of your car, you look around and you go, my God, this place is just spectacular. Thank God it didn't burn. Because our little campus right here is, looking out the door here, I can't believe that hill was a raging forest fire on Tuesday of Fire Week. And now it looks like, oh, there's nice fall colors.
Yeah.
That you don't see sticks. If you go around the hill to the side that faces sort of southeast towards Matt's house, it is sticks there. And you drive up and down the Spring Mountain Road, and you see a lot of bare land that's just been swept clean. So it's something worth seeing. You're probably never going to see it again here.
It won't be like this for long. Assuming we get rain, fingers crossed. This place will recover very quickly.
Right.
It's going to be lush and verdant in no time flat.
Right.
And we're excited for that process too, because this forest is now spotless. You can walk through the densest of the parts of our property now with your bare feet, basically. You're just on this nice cushy pine needle ash floor now that's just ready to go, as far as, this small understory growth that hasn't had room to grow in, 50, 60 years. Yeah. It's going to be great, or interesting. We're lucky enough to be in that position to look forward to what grasses are going to show up in the spring, because we didn't burn down. So obviously our hearts go out to those that aren't in the position to wonder about the grasses,
right?
Because they didn't get so lucky.
And another takeaway for me is that now that we can see so much more as we go up and down Spring Mountain Road, these enhanced views, it really gives the impression of how rugged this mountain is. And it makes me think back to why anybody would have ever come up here in the first place. And you got to give credit to the pioneers, the Conradis that built this winery. And what the hell were they thinking? Coming up here in a horse-drawn carriage. I mean, we have cars down roads. It's not that big a deal.
But you still need a road for a carriage. Like, how do you build a road up there with shovels and horses and I guess oxen pulling stumps out? I don't know how you do that.
I don't know, but they truly were pioneers. And also some credit to my dad again, 1974, coming up here when Spring Mountain was just known as the hinterlands of Napa Valley.
Right.
God, what did he see in this rugged land? And somebody was interviewing me the other day for a podcast. They said, well, how do you feel now about your dad's decision to buy a property up there when you're so much safer in the middle of the valley? Which is true from fire. I mean, if you live in the middle of Oakville, you've got let's say an 80-acre vineyard, and your house is in the middle of it, your chances of having a wildfire burn your house down are very, very low.
Still going to get the smoke taint.
you might actually get more smoke taint in the valley. But I got posed this question. I said, no, I'm still daily grateful that my father picked this amazing property that we are beginning to unlock the mysteries to, and the adventure continues. We're having a pretty good time doing it, despite the adversity that has been hurled at us on a fairly regular basis.
Well, and now we've got this great sort of forest fire armor now. It's, say for like an 80-mile-an-hour fire tornado event, which just torches all the canopies of the trees, nothing you can do about that. The kind of fire that we dealt with for the glass, I don't know if that's something that can happen here anytime soon in the future now that there's just no fuel anymore.
Right.
This mountain is all black, essentially, as far as the forest floor goes, and a lot of the medium and small growth. So I have a lot of confidence that we're going to have a lot of security going forward, too, at least in the near and maybe medium term.
Interesting. Well, I thank you both for coming on today, and for everybody that's viewing. Please give us a like, and then also what we'll do is we'll put in the notes down below. We'll put the email from Michael and Reilly so that you can reach out to them should you feel the need to ask more questions. And by all means, in the comments section, ask questions, whatever you'd like to know. But definitely get in touch with these guys. If you're new to us, new to Keenan, find some Keenan. Find it. It's some of the greatest wine in the world. And if you are a collector and you don't put this wine in your cellar, shame on you. You have to put this wine in your cellar. It's some of the most amazing stuff you could ever have in your cellar. Everybody should have it. So, gentlemen, thanks a bunch, and we'll look forward to seeing you at some point. I got to get on an airplane someday and come out and say hello. I can't. By now, I normally would have been out there at least 6 times, and now it's.
Have you flown yet?
No, I have not been on an airplane since March 13th. Yeah. So, strange. But thanks very much, and we'll see you again soon.